All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for holding with me as I got everybody in. So my name is Alex Newsome. I am a career counselor at the Center for Career and Professional Development. And today we are joined by some wonderful people. Um, to talk a little bit about how they got into the positions that they're in currently, but also a little bit about their background, how they figured out, what was a good fit for them, what they wanted in a job, and how they patiently, as I explained, explored options until they found the right one. So I'm just going to briefly, I want Jackie, Nate, and Jenna to at least kind of say, hey, I'm going to give them a chance to really describe who they are as we go through. But first, I'm just going to start with Jackie Palmer. She is an international education program coordinator at Howard Community College. So, hey, Jackie. Jenna is an employee advocate at Sequoia One. And then Nate Newsome is our third panelist, and he is a research associate in the applied virtual reality at Clemson University. So thank y'all very much for being with us today. And bear with me as I, haven't apparently done a Zoom call in a while. I have lost my questions. So give me 1 second to get them back. And then we'll go from there. But what we're going to do, kind of how this is going to roll, is we are going to start with a few basic questions. They're going to introduce themselves. They're going to talk a little bit about their background. I have a few questions that I plan to ask for the panel, but I want y'all to really take the opportunity to be able to ask these three wonderful panelists anything that you may want to know about kind of their journey, but also how it relates to you, how to find that right position moving forward. What I do ask though is if y'all will please just jot them into the chat section so that, because we have a lot of people on here today, drop them into the chat either as you think about them, as it goes through, and I will read them aloud for our panelists. Does that make sense, everybody? I'm going to go with yes. All right, so we're going to get started with the first question. So Jackie, Jenna, and Nate, please just tell us briefly about yourselves, your position, your connection to Clemson, all those things.
I'll go ahead and start. So thanks for having us, Alex. So my name's Nate. I'm a virtual reality researcher here at Clemson. Definitely did not have a traditional way of getting here. Been at Clemson since 2009 when I started in undergrad. My goal then was to become a animator and do the digital production arts program. Through a lot of different things, ended up with in the art department and got my undergrad, my bachelor's in sculpture, and then worked my way into a computer science master's program. And now I'm kind of combining both the art and computer side in what I do. I get to work with a lot of different groups on campus. I'm split between the Watts Center and the Sunoco Institute for Packaging Design and Graphics. So I get to work on a lot of interesting projects and anyone who wants to do virtual or augmented reality.
I can go ahead. So as Alex said, my name is Jenna Figaro, and I'm an employee advocate with Sequoia One, which is a smaller section within a larger company called Sequoia, and basically working in human resources. And my path was definitely not linear either. I went to Clemson for graduate school and got my master's in counselor education and student affairs, with the goal of staying in the realm of career counseling and advising in higher ed. And so I graduated 4 years ago and am now working in human resources. So yeah, I've made a little bit of a change too.
Hi, everyone. Like Alex said, my name is Jackie Palmer. I currently am a program coordinator at Howard Community College. Again, like Nate and Jenna, very different where I am versus where I thought I would be. I knew I wanted to be in higher education, so similar to Jenna, I got a master's in education, specifically student affairs through Clemson, and I was a GA for our lovely career center, specifically career development. And so I thought my goal was to be orientation. Career services was a passion that I had found in grad school, but I thought based on my previous work, I really wanted to be in orientation in a functional area, but I knew I wanted to be in higher education. And then my second year of grad school, I was like, wait a second, I would really love to really understand the cultural differences amongst other countries and do that in the capacity of experiential learning. So that is kind of why I shifted to the international education side. And after graduate school, I was able to take on some contract work through program coordinating in Boston, in Greece, and then I worked with a gap year organization as well. So again, I've been in international ed for the past 3 years, but definitely not where I thought I would be, but very grateful to have had the support to get here. Yeah, so it's a little bit about me.
Excellent. So y'all touched on this a little bit, but tell everybody a little bit about what maybe your first job was, or first or second. Tell us a little bit about what you learned from that experience. So did you figure out what you liked, what you didn't like, what your goals were? Just share a little bit about what that kind of journey started out as.
I can start. Um, I think for me, right after undergrad, like I said, I was very involved in undergrad and I knew I wanted to be in higher education. And so I knew I would like to go back for my master's, but I wanted to get some work experience first and really figure out what program would be fit for me and locationally what would work. And so I was an academic placement advisor for Pearson Connections Academy. And that was my first job out of undergrad, still in education, but it was K to 12, and I didn't get the interaction with students that I really wanted to. It was all like phone based, really working with families instead of students. So my kind of plan going into it was this would be a great experience to get transferable skills, still in the education realm, but I was very proactive in really mapping out what my next progression within the next year or two to go back to school was. So really talking to my network of people and looking into programs. So I just knew that that wasn't necessarily my end goal, but it was something that I really wanted to get transferable skills out of and really be intentional in my search for grad school.
I'll go ahead and go next. So, like I said, when I started at Clemson, my goal was to be an animator, join the DPA program here. Throughout undergrad, I moved into the visual arts program, started doing sculpture, still worked a lot with digital technologies in my art, did a lot with interactive technologies specifically, and was talking with a number of professors that I had been taking some coding classes from and things like that, and kind of realized I didn't really want to go into the production industry. I like the idea of what they do, but I didn't enjoy the lifestyle that would come with that. So, as I was starting to mess with those technologies, I had talked with a few people in that program, and they pointed me towards some other research that was going on at Clemson with virtual reality, and there were some grad programs in that I could jump into after my art program. So ended up shifting that way. After art, I knew I needed to go into my master's. So while I was waiting and applying into those positions, the first position out of that was working with the art department again. And it was more of a marketing and working directly with donors for the art department. So I got a little bit of behind the scenes of how universities work with donors, how different departments get their funding, and started to see what it would be like working at a university. Really enjoyed the kind of lifestyle that comes with that as well. Enjoyed that I still got to work with some students. but I really found that I really liked the working in a team atmosphere, and I liked the people I was working with. And even though it wasn't the field I wanted to be in, I quickly realized that was kind of the environment I wanted out of a position. That was the first position out of undergrad.
Sure. And I should have mentioned as well, I was also a graduate assistant in the Clemson Career Center working with Alex and Jackie at the time. And so that really sparked my interest in career, and where I really found my love and my home within higher education was in the career counseling, its advising space, being able to teach and educate. And so when I finished my program, my first job was doing exactly that. I got a job as a career and industry specialist at a university out here. I live in Arizona, so out here in Arizona. Um, and that job was great for a lot of reasons and challenging for a lot of reasons. I really liked the variety that I had in the job. No 2 days were ever the same. I really liked that I was challenged, but I really struggled with kind of the values mismatch of where my values aligned and kind of what the cultural values were of where I was working. I was there for 2 years before I transitioned into a different role in higher ed. And, similar to a lot of people, the pandemic changed things, changed people's priorities. And that was kind of the case for me in thinking about the type of environment that I wanted to work in, the type of flexibility I wanted to have with my job, and realizing that in some industries, you're just not able to have exactly what I was looking for, higher education kind of being one of them in my case. And so I started looking at opportunities outside of higher ed where I could really transition those skills and the aspects that I enjoyed of those jobs, but just doing it in a different space. So still getting to educate and teach and support people, but doing it in an environment that really aligns with my values that I really enjoy.
Y'all are so wonderful. I love it. Tell us a little bit about what you wish you would have known when you first started looking at positions. And tell us a little bit about when did you know you weren't content in the role that you were in, and kind of what pushed you to move forward. Does that make sense? Okay, go for it.
Go for it, Nate. If you want to.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, the switch from art to more computer science research side. You know, I was working in an art field. I really enjoyed the creative freedom, um, but I had limited resources with that department to do kind of the things that I really wanted to do. So I knew that I really wanted to work more with those interactive technologies. So started doing a lot of networking, finding out, what options there were. So my biggest thing I think I wish I knew was what resources were out there to begin with. And that really all I had to do, especially as a student, was just start asking the questions. One of the things I found working in the university is it is so much easier as a student to get access to other departments' resources. So if you're in a field or in a program that is limited by budget or technologies, you have an opportunity to reach out to other departments and find what you are interested in, and they can help you get access to those tools. So I had to do a lot of that in the art department with working with other faculty to get access to some of those tools that my department didn't have.
Yeah, I would going off of that. I think like just resources that you have and like the network. I think is not being afraid to ask for what your goal, like figuring out what those goals are to just your entire network. I think sometimes we limit ourselves of, oh, well, they're not in that specific field, they wouldn't necessarily know. For instance, again, my second year of grad school, I was like, I really want to explore the experiential learning and the international education aspects. And so I talked to my advisor just as I was thinking through what jobs I was going to apply for. And she actually really connected me with previous students, and I networked that way. And I didn't initially go into the conversation expecting that resource to be available, but I not only was connected with someone else that had previously been in the program, I ended up being able to connect with someone that they did the job I ended up getting with, just based on who they know. So I think sometimes we go and cut ourselves off of, well, they probably don't know. I think people are more than willing to help. And I think that sometimes we feel like it's a bother, but I would always be open to helping my network and those that a network would refer me to. So yeah, definitely seeking out other resources that you wouldn't necessarily think were there. I think one thing, back to the question, is that like I wish I knew um, when looking for a role. I would say just not, especially for those maybe that are, this is their first job or first job out of a program, don't expect necessarily to get the absolute dream job. It's okay to be content with taking a job that you're going to just really increase the skills, transferable and new, and not fully know what you want to do forever. I think that putting myself, I know in certain situations, has opened my world to new opportunities. Like I said, I was the career development GA, and I hadn't had as much previous career development experiences. And I think that if I hadn't done that, my world wouldn't have been open to the possibilities of what I am in and the people that I know and the experiences that I've had. So I think just really allow yourself this space to continue to grow, and that you don't have to know it all then.
I love everything that they have both said. Yeah, I agree with that. I think one thing I wish I had known too was that I'm not stuck in a box because of my degree and my experience. I think my undergraduate degree was in education. My graduate degree was in education. I worked professionally in education for 3.5 years. And so I think when you get in your comfort zone, it's easy to feel stuck or like you can't transition out of that. And I wish I would have had that reminder or not been so scared to look for opportunities outside of my comfort zone, because you hear about transferable skills all the time, but it's so true. Like those skills are going to be so valuable, even if you do decide to make a career switch or transition somewhere else. And networking is a huge piece of that too. I ended up getting my job that I'm in now in human resources through networking, but also through being able to articulate those transferable skills, because you still have to make the connection of show me how you can do this job, but having people who can vouch for you and say, hey, this is a quality person who I know can learn the job and they're a good fit with what our company values, that goes a long way. And so I think it's important not to discredit those things too.
Y'all are transitioning so beautifully to my next question without even me telling you, because these are student questions that just came in. This one was specifically targeted at Nate, but you guys would all beautifully touch on it. So I'm going to throw it out to whoever wants to answer it as well. But can y'all elaborate a little on that networking process? What did it look like for you? And it was to Nate, but I think all of you would be valuable in it.
Sure, I'll go ahead and take it to start with. I did a lot of my networking for my current field, I would say, in grad school. I was lucky enough to get into a program that exposed me to a lot of experts in my field. Went to a lot of conferences and just met people from all over the world who were doing really interesting things. And while they weren't all what I specifically wanted to get into, having them as a resource to go to and saying, well, I may not know everything about this part, but I know who I can talk to get those answers. So I built up a really good network in grad school by talking to different people working on different projects. I took a internship in LA for 3 or 4 months, and then while I was out there, was able to talk with a lot of different people across that industry, in the entertainment industry. And while I don't directly work with all of them anymore, they've all gone on. I keep track of them so that I know who I can talk to about different parts of the field, and who may have job openings as well.
Yeah, I would say I feel like lately it's kind of I'm making a network within my network. I'm kind of just being introduced that way, and that's really worked for me. In the past, definitely in grad school, like making connections across communities, and by that I mean like functional areas for my specific fields was really helpful. Taking initiative and doing, like Nate said, like research projects or like internships that really helped me. I would also say just really maintaining those relationships, similar to what Nate said, because you just never know when you might want to shift fields and someone's actually in that, but for it to feel very organic and it doesn't feel like I'm just using you to get this recommendation or to get in this way. But it feels like, oh, this is just like we're checking up monthly and this just feels natural. And oh, we actually have an opening, or let me get you in touch with this person. So maintaining those networks that you have, but not feeling like you have to know everybody and everything, but making genuine connections, I think has really helped me.
Jenna, before you answer, I want to ask another question that came in about networking that I think you would be a really, really beneficial person to ask. Someone asked, what about networking as an introvert? How do you start that? And guys, I know Jenna very well. She used to be my graduate assistant, which is why I'm targeting her.
Such a good question. Networking as an introvert. Um, I would say some things that have been helpful for me are starting with people who you already have some sort of connection with, just to get comfortable with the process. So whether that be reaching out to someone over email, reaching out to someone over LinkedIn, you kind of have a little more control over the situation. Setting up a Zoom call or a phone call, if that's preferable to meeting in person. I think it really kind of depends on how you're feeling about the situation. Um, but I know for me, I was very intentional to push myself out of my comfort zone, but also start with people who didn't seem as intimidating, if that makes sense. So, maybe I would ask Alex, for example, for someone that would be a good person for me to chat with. And just kind of knowing me and knowing the other person, she could maybe create that introduction for me. So taking advantage of people that you're already comfortable with and have those strong relationships with to kind of bridge that gap for you can be really helpful getting started. And do it in the format that you feel comfortable in. If that's a phone call, if that's a Zoom call, if that's in person, all of those are professional these days. No one's going to bat an eye if you ask for a phone call instead of meeting up in person. And so I would say just start with whatever feels the most comfortable for you. And the more you do it, the easier it'll get. I actually reach out to people for informational interviews all the time, which is not something I thought I would say when I was Alex's graduate assistant. But I feel so comfortable now reaching out to people on LinkedIn or specifically within my company through like Microsoft Teams or something. Just saying, hey, I see that you're in this role. I would love to learn more about this, hear about your career journey. And people are always willing to share about where they've been and where they're headed and kind of pay it forward and give that same advice too. And so I feel like that's been a really easy way for me to kind of take charge of the situation. And then I can schedule the meetings and make sure that I'm prepared. So I think that's been really helpful.
Could throw in one more thing with that. I had two or three very influential people at Clemson, who have been here forever and just know a lot of people because they have been here forever, right? They know who in different departments to go to for interesting projects or things like that. So I really utilize those people. And I had worked with them for a while, so they knew me and knew who I would work well with. So whether they're professors or maybe your boss, if you have an internship, I know I have interns that come to me all the time asking what they should do for internships or who they should talk to for grad school, or maybe they're in a field they don't like but they really want to try virtual reality, or they're interested in something like that. And the longer we're here, the more we build up those networks on campus and outside of campus. And I'm always happy to point those students in that direction and make those connections for them to start with.
Also, just one more thing that made me think of it when y'all were talking is just as much as you could benefit from the network that you're creating with someone, like they could also benefit from you. So I think give yourself the credit, because I think some people think, oh, I haven't had as much work experience, but you just never know where you're going to go and what they might need. So as much as you're getting, you're also giving. So people are very willing to help because it builds their own network as well.
I'm going to say career counselor Alex over here is going to say you're also on a call with 3 really wonderful people who would most likely be willing to chat with you after if you have questions or want to follow up. So just kind of keep that in your back pocket. Y'all are actually networking here as well, which is cool. All right, I'm going to jump because lots of people are asking great questions and I'm excited. Nate, this again is specifically targeted to you, but I still think Jackie and Jenna would be beneficial resources. So this person asked, or kind of said, you have made a really interesting switch, Nate, from art to computer science. Had you known about this interest from the very beginning, what would have been your approach?
That's kind of hard to say. I really like the path I've ended up with, even though it was not the easy path to get to where I'm at, for a few reasons. One, being in the art department, even though I knew I probably wasn't going to be, an artist, a professional artist for my career, I really learned a lot from it, especially one of the things that you get out of an art degree that you may not get out of a design degree or something similar is being able to take criticism well. Your work is constantly critiqued by your peers and your professors. That is transferred way beyond art and into basically every project I've worked on since. Learning those skills and learning how to take criticism and effectively apply it in a project. From that program, I'm at the point where if you tell me my work is perfect, it frustrates me more than if you tell me my work has got a few issues, because I can point out at least 10 problems with it. So some of those skills that don't really seem like they really transfer well have really built kind of the stepping stones to even get me to this position in the first place. I will say my position as well is a little bit unique in that it didn't exist on campus but before I had it. So I was fortunate enough to where there were 2 different groups that I had worked with in undergrad and graduate school, that some of my grad work, while it wasn't really what I wanted to do as much, had elements that connected me with these couple of groups that I work with now that let me figure out how to actually build what I had been working on into a career here. And I was fortunate enough where the timing lined up, where VR was taking off and they were in need of someone to be that expert. So had I done it differently, I probably wouldn't have been here at the right time. I probably wouldn't have had the same skill set. So I don't know if there's much I would have changed, besides probably maybe building out my network a little bit more early on, and starting to figure out what was out there. But I don't think I would have changed a whole lot.
And this is a good question to segue into a different question that I prepared. How did you ultimately decide to move forward out of a job you didn't necessarily love or knew that you needed to move on from? And then what steps did you take to kind of figure out what you wanted to do next?
I can start with this one. So how did I know when I was ready to transition out? I had in my head with my first job that I wanted to stay for a year. And I knew pretty early on that it wasn't a great culture fit for me. But as Jackie said, your first job doesn't need to be your dream job. And I saw a lot of opportunity and potential in this job to grow as a person and a professional. And I did so much. So many of the skills that I have now as a professional are from that job, even though I didn't love it. And so I really wanted to stick it out for a year at least and just push myself out of my comfort zone, see how I could grow. And in that time, actually, the is when the pandemic started. And so I ended up staying in that job almost 2 years just for job security because there was so much uncertainty at that time. But at the time when I decided I was ready to leave, I really took inventory of what I enjoyed about that job and what I wanted to take with me moving forward. Because as much as we might end up in positions that we don't love, sometimes I think we learn more from those. And so thinking about what is really important for me to have in the next opportunity that I take, I spent a lot of time reflecting on that and what I wanted and what I didn't want. And then from there, so many informational interviews. And not really knowing where I wanted to go next or when it came time for me to transition out of higher education, I completed so many informational interviews with people in my network in fields that I was curious in. I, met with people in recruiting, human resources, test proctoring. Like, I mean, these jobs were all across the board. But I really wanted to speak with people who had gone through a career transition specifically and what advice they had for people who are trying to transition out. And I feel like that's ultimately what helped me realize, okay, this industry seems like it's going to be a good fit based on what I value and based on what I want out of a job. And then being able to find a company that also matches the values that I have, I feel like is really what made me learn to love my job, even though it's not an industry I was educationally trained for. I think it's really important to pay attention to those values and to Nate's point to the lifestyle that you want to have with your work, because you do spend a decent amount of time at work. And so you want to make sure that it aligns with the lifestyle that you want to and trying to find that blend.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with what you all have been saying. I think for me, the transition that I had for the past about a year and a half, 2 years, I've been doing contract work within international education. And so I've been traveling abroad with students. I've worn a lot of different hats. For instance, I had the role of residential, like essentially like art residential life because I was living in the same vicinity as students. That's not something I ever done before. So for me, again, back to transferable skills, like those are the way that I would talk up the transferable skills I have. I have a different lens, although it's international education and I'm coming from student affairs. I think that adds value. I think that I was able to speak on, I haven't had residential experience to the extent of others. However, this is something I want to gain from this experience, which I think can make you very marketable. Um, but I also think like it's just as important to know what you do like, but also what you don't like. And I think to Nate's point, like taking a non-traditional, like linear path, however you get there, I think is really valuable because some of the things that I found, I don't think I would have known what to look for or exactly what I wanted and the values that I really hold. So I think sometimes it's really good to know what you're not really as interested in or what is truly a make or break for a position that you have. to just know that early on, because that is going to benefit you. But I would say my transition, it wasn't that I didn't love what I was doing, but I really found difficulty in being very mobile, and I was looking for the same profession, more what's the word I'm looking for? I wanted to be more stable and like foundational. So it was more looking for qualities of that same position that I had in the position I have now. So it's just really being intentional and sitting down and kind of making a pros and cons list. But like Jenna, I did a lot of informational interviews and really used my network to kind of figure out what that looked like for me.
Excellent. What advice would you all give to someone who is not sure what direction they want to go in after graduate school? I love this for all of you. This is a great question.
So I'll go ahead and start with my post grad school story. I didn't immediately get into this position. It took me well over a year for this position to happen. And that was with knowing for the most part, knowing this is kind of where I wanted to end up, and even having people at Clemson who wanted to hire me, but the timing wasn't right, the money wasn't there, the position didn't exist. So I kind of leaned on the skills I had already built up. I, went through the process applying for jobs. I was holding out for the position that I really wanted. And I did that for a little bit too long. So it was probably 3, 4 months, maybe longer, that that I was just doing small jobs here and there with design work, or trying to make a VR position happen with different groups, but they kind of weren't ready yet. So I ended up working for Lowe's for about a year before I got this position. And, coming out of grad school, it's, a little disheartening to move into a, part-time retail position. But I learned a lot from that position, and I'm really happy that I had it. One, they were wonderful. Straight out of my first month working there, we had our first baby, and they were awesome to work with around that, and they were flexible. But I needed to pay the bills, so that was a great position to get into. And the whole time I was there, I was still working with Clemson. I was still working with some other groups, trying to figure out kind of where I could go, and what a position would look like staying in this area. But what was nice was I got to really kind of build up some of my people skills, right? Directly interacting with customers. I got to learn how different management styles worked well, or what management styles I worked well with, and kind of what I was looking for in a team. I worked with a few different positions while I was there, and especially living in the area still, I had also built up a network of people in the area that outside of my career, I know different contractors I can go to. I know different people who work in all kinds of fields in the area that I can point people towards for different projects. So it was definitely a learning experience. I don't regret it, and I'm very happy it was there. But it was definitely a humbling experience, and let me have that extra time to find the position that I really wanted.
Yeah, I would say it's okay, not like I said, not to know what you like, what the end goal is. I think it's more what are you willing to be in contentness now, as well as like Jenna had said earlier, like where do you feel like you're really going to grow as a professional and personal, and feel that you are like nurtured in that setting. So I think just really take the time, be intentional. I think people put pressure on, I have to have a job before I graduate, which is not the mentality to have. But I also understand everyone's situation is different. So that might look different based on the needs of someone. But if you are able to really be intentional in that process and just know that if it doesn't feel right and there's another opportunity, see what that looks like. But I think also just don't put too much pressure on yourself to know it all now. Find contentness in like what you would be comfortable in growing in, and being in a setting that you do feel like there's a network of people to learn, there's upward mobility. Maybe you really want to be with a specific company, but it's not the ideal position you thought. If there's ways to grow in that, maybe you think about taking a position you didn't think of. Like maybe it's a little bit lower of a level if again if you're able to, but just be open to that possibility, and yeah, don't put a lot of pressure on yourself.
Yeah, I love that. I'll say to Jackie's point, obviously, I didn't just graduate, but leaving an industry that was everything that I knew, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. It's not like I all of a sudden had a passion for human resources. I barely knew what that was. And so it was really just taking a leap of faith and knowing these are the values that I have in a work environment, and these are the types of skills that I have that I can offer. Is the company that I am applying to work with, do they align with those values? Are they going to push me to grow? And to Jackie's point, is there upward mobility? If I'm able to get my foot in the door here and taking that leap of faith, not even sure if I'm going to like it, but if I do get the opportunity, is there room for me to move around? Because I really wanted to find somewhere that was going to be a professional home for me. And that doesn't necessarily have to be the case for you with your first job. But just know that it's never really going to be a sure thing as long as you're just being self-aware of what's important to you in a job and making sure that you're putting yourself in a position that at the end of the day is going to help you grow, whether you love it or not. It's not going to be a bad choice.
Y'all are a wealth of information. Thank you. I'm gonna try to get through two more questions that students have, but I want to be really respectful of y'all's time and everybody's time. So just we're gonna play it by ear. I want to ask. Someone asked, what are some things that you took it? Wow, sorry. I'm gonna start that question over. I'm sorry, y'all. What are some things that you took advantage of or wished you have utilized more when you were an undergraduate student?
I immediately think the Career Center. I did not know the Career Center existed when I was an undergrad, and it would have helped me so much. I mean, with major exploration, with career exploration, with understanding even how to network, how to build a resume, I was just kind of winging it. It wasn't really until my senior year that I learned we had a Career Center. And so I wish that's something I would have taken advantage of a lot sooner, especially the Clemson Career Center, one of the best.
Yeah,
I
no, 100%
I
agree.
didn't tell them to say that. I want everyone to know that is of their own free will. Go for it, Jackie. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say the same thing. Like the fact that you're here, that you're a part of these different sessions that you can take advantage of. Like you always can start somewhere. So definitely Career Center. Um, I would, yeah, I don't know how some of the positions I like in undergrad, I was like, what was I doing without it? But I think another thing is just, yeah, it goes back to that like networking piece of like how simple it can be in regards to just a conversation. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. I think when I first looked at networking, it felt like, oh, I'm about to have an interview when really it's just a conversation. So I definitely wish that is something that I know. Also, in addition to transferable skills, like I said, just really owning in an interview or conversation what you are looking to gain, maybe what you don't have, but how Jenna said, it's all the way that you talk about transferable skills and being able to make connections, making connections to, I have a lot of qualities that you're looking for in candidates in this position, but I'm looking to gain these skills and that's why I'm interested. I may not have it in the same way as another candidate. Maybe don't say it that way, but I think that owning that is really beneficial, if done the right way. And again, using the Career Center to really think through how to have that conversation when it comes to certain skills, is something that I had wish I had been intentional in I think I marked some jobs off because I didn't think I was marketable enough. And I wish that I would have kept those on. But just something I know now that I think, yeah, others should know as well.
I wish I had an answer outside of the Career Center, but I don't. I'm actually going to talk about two parts here. One, I'm the same. I didn't even know we had a Career Center. And I really wish I would have taken advantage of it a little earlier. I would have had a much clearer idea of how I need to start marketing myself, and how I can use the tools that are there to actually find jobs as well. So they've got some great resources. The second part to that, kind of housed under the Career Center, I guess, is also the internship program on campus. UPIC was not a resource that I had in undergrad. It started after I had graduated, but I absolutely love the UPIC program. I have 9 students that work for me in various positions now. And they have the opportunity to see what it's like to work in a professional environment. And you can probably even find something that's even close to your field. That is the goal of it. I've had a number of students that have worked with me that thought they wanted to go into coding and figured out by the end of it they didn't want to code for a living, or work in VR or work in production, things like that. So it's a really neat opportunity to get paid and start that networking process and start to see what it's like working in a professional internship.
Excellent. Someone asked, how important was pay for all of you while you were looking for your first and second jobs? Nate can answer this one because he had a baby during that first one.
Pay became really important really fast. And in my specific situation, the the pay I had ideally in my head looked like it was going to be a little ways off. So that was the position I wanted, but I also needed something to pay the bills at that time too. So it took realizing that I don't need the dream job to start with. I just needed a job, and I could continue looking for that dream job while I was there. And I was also very upfront with them about that when I got hired at Lowe's, that I had told them that what I was looking for. And a lot of retail places, now with things like Uber, all kinds of, these other options, you can still pay the bills while you're looking for that dream job.
Yeah, I'll add to this. I think my first, second jobs pay wasn't a huge, I mean, when you're going to work in education, you're not really motivated by pay. And so that wasn't like a huge concern for me. I just wanted to be able to live my life, have a roof over my head. But as you all may know, the last couple years have been very expensive. And so ultimately, pay was a really big factor in me deciding to leave the field of higher education, thinking about the type of lifestyle that I wanted to have. And yeah, especially where I live. I live in a city, which is also very expensive. And so those are things that, more recently have become heftier in how I make decisions about the roles that I will accept. I will say one thing that I didn't pay attention to so much when I was getting my first job was benefits, because when you're accepting a job, it's not just about your salary, it's about the benefit package they're offering you too, because that can get incredibly expensive. Do they offer a 401k? What is their PTO policy? All of those things really can be and should be make it or break it factors when it comes to taking a job as well, especially with the job market right now can be kind of competitive. Companies, I mean, especially our company, we're really seeing they're having to increase those perks and those benefits in order to keep people, to retain their employees, because if they don't offer it, someone else will. And so I would say when you're looking for jobs, considering pay, consider the whole package too, not just the take-home salary.
Yeah, I would agree. I think to your point, Jenna, is that are definitely something my shift has adjusted as I am in the field and, getting older and my lifestyle is changing. I think when I first graduated, I was very fortunate. I was able to save money and live at home. I knew it was not my end all be all because I was going back to grad school. So I was very comfortable in saving money. So again, financially I was able to save, and so pay wasn't that important. I think for my contract positions, that looks very different because benefits aren't always included. Also, I was getting a lot of experiences with that. So my housing, my meals, and travel with students was accommodated. So there were other aspects that were compensated. And so I was like, okay, this is an experience that I'm with students and my own personal self. So I was able to feel more comfortable maybe taking not the ideal salary because there were other benefits included. But I think back to the point of kind of why I've shifted out of that contract and wanted more stability is because, I'm thinking about retirement, even though we're younger. Various in ages, I think that's always something like that's at the forefront are like benefits and just preparing yourself for whatever it is that you intend to do based on your lifestyle. So I think it's something that, as Jenna said, the past couple of years, means of living has just increased. So it's definitely on my mind more. But I think in the beginning, I was willing to kind of put that to the side because of different aspects for my situation.
I'll throw in one last thing real quick. While I've been at Clemson, I've had other opportunities pop up that would definitely pay more, but the lifestyle change for me wasn't worth it. Yeah, I really thrive when I get to work with individuals. I've found, especially through COVID, that working in person with others is more important to me than I thought. And while the other job may have paid way more, I would have had to kind of work at home by myself alone in a on a computer, and that just wasn't going to work out as for what I wanted that position to be.
That segues really beautifully. In our last, we've got like 5-ish minutes. Could y'all share just a little bit about, I know everybody seems very content in the job they are right now. Are we done have you settled in exactly what you want to do for the rest of your life? And if not, tell them, give maybe one little piece of advice of even where you are now, what are you looking for moving forward in your careers?
I can start.
For this question, y'all.
Yeah, I can start. I think that for me, I'm like content. I like the area I'm in. I think I would like to continue to work with students more. So this is my first community college. It's a little bit different than a four-year university. We have our students that are coming from dual enrollment. They're coming for a semester, for 2 years. So it looks a little different. I think that I haven't, found this is where I'm going to be forever. But I think one thing to know is that it's always changing. You have new experiences. Like Nate said, like certain aspects of his job didn't exist. Like there are new jobs every day. You can create your own. So I think don't ever pigeonhole yourself. I think if you're content and comfortable, that's amazing and wonderful, but always be open to like what could be if you kind of have this inkling to like branch out, do that. But always kind of keep your head on a swivel just in case. It's yeah, I think it's always nice to do.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and say I'm lucky enough. I basically got to create this position, and it gives me the flexibility to do everything that I really want to do. But that's not to say that I'm stagnant in this. I'm always open to other opportunities if there's a different space I can move into at the university or even a different company. I keep try to keep those options open. It helps on a couple of fronts. One, especially in my field with virtual reality, it's changing daily. I have to kind of stay on top of the technologies that are changing and kind of the direction that the industry goes. So with that, I'm keeping up with that network. That doesn't stop. I still interact with people in industry frequently, and try to change the projects that I take on based off of, kind of where the industry is going, so that I can kind of stay ahead of the curve and build up those skills that I don't have yet, so that if those opportunities come up, I'm ready for them.
Yeah, and I'll say my role now is not my end all be all. I like where I'm at, and thinking forward, I would like to move up within the company in time. But I think if there's one thing I've really gathered over the last few years, it's just to be open, because you have no idea what opportunities are going to present themselves, who you're going to meet. And also, my priorities now look so different than they did when I graduated from Clemson. And I don't think I was necessarily prepared for that shift to happen in me personally, of where my priorities were and what was important to me. And I'm sure that that's going to change over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years too. So I can't even anticipate that what I want right now is what I'm going to want 5 years from now. So I think just being open to kind of wherever life takes you, as cliche as that sounds.
I think one other thing is, like, if you're interested in an area, maybe start doing certifications to make yourself more marketable while you're in a different area. So just taking advantage of little webinars or whatever it may be to just continue to keep yourself up to date in your profession or another.
Thank you. Y'all have been great. If y'all posted a question and I did not get to it, I apologize. If you would like me to get those questions to the panelists, please send me an email, and I can do that and move forward. But thank you, panelists, Nate, Jackie, Jenna. It has been a delight to hear y'all's stories. And for everybody else, thank you so much for being here today. We hit just like 1 minute before 1. So thank you for coming. And if y'all need anything, please let us know. But if not, this is the conclusion of our panel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.